He is he is recognized for many critics to be the best actor, director, producer, composer, and screenwriter of all times, such as Andrew Zimmers that said, arguably the single most important actor producer by the cinema. Certainly it is most extraordinary performer and it is still the most universal icon. I am talking about Charlie Chaplin. Well-known websites such as IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes said that he is one of the most popular actors of Hollywood of all times. But why a man that was born over 100 years ago is still relevant to us? Well, he was a pioneer in the cinema industry, being one of the first ones to make a movie with a full story. Also, he continues to influence the cinema of nowadays. So, hopefully, at the end of this presentation, you will share some of the admiration I have towards this genius. So, let's start with his early life. Charlie Chaplin was born in 1889 in London, England. He had a hard childhood coming from a low-income family and going to workhouses. Her mother was an actress such as him, and she encouraged him to be an actor too. Um, in more than one occasion, Charlie had to replace her mother on the stage because she suffered of mental illnesses. When Charlie was 17, he found his first job with his brother as a comedian. Nevertheless, it was not in England that Charlie Chaplin became famous. When he was 18, he began to make tours around North America until 1913 that he began to work with the famous director Mark Sennett. During this time, he acted and produced hundreds of short movies, most of them being The Trump, his most popular character. In 1921, Charlie Chaplin released The Kid, one of the most iconic movies of all times, the movie that took Charlie Chaplin to the fame. What made the Charlie Chaplin movies so great were that since they were silent, he was capable of making gestures as an actor and making scenes as a director and a screenwriter, so his audience could understand his emotions. He had an incredible capacity to make the audience laugh. He also had an incredible capacity to make the audience laugh. We can see this in movies such as The Gold Rush from 1925 and The Psychers from 1928. Although he made comedies, his movies were full of meaning. We can see this in movies such as City Lights from 1931 and Modern Times from 1936. In this movie, he criticized the system where the workers and poor were oppressed. The most popular years for Chaplin were the 20s and 30s, although everyone has to go out of fame eventually. What took Charlie Chaplin out of fame was the beginning of the sound movies and the end of the silent era. Charlie Chaplin only made one sound movie in 1940, The Great Dictator. This movie was really controversial because it was released in the middle of the World War II, and it was a satire of Adolf Hitler. Charlie Chaplin said in his autobiography from 1964 that he would not make this movie if he would know the horrors the war would bring in consequent years. Charlie Chaplin could never adapt to this new era, and slowly his movies began to have less and less impact. In the press scare, the FBI wanted him out of the US because of his liberal politics. In 1952, he was one of the US being accused of being a communist. He only returned one time in 1973 to accept his honorary Academy Award. But please do not remember Charlie because of his last years. He was a genius in several ways. There are a few people in the cinema industry that made almost everything about their movies. Nevertheless, this was not the most impressive fact about Charlie Chaplin. In my opinion, the most impressive fact about him is that he put a smile in the world in the World War One, the 1929 crisis, and the World War Two. Hopefully, now that I have finished my presentation, you are anxious to see one of Charlie Chaplin's movies. And remember, as Charlie Chaplin once said, a day without laughing is a day wasted.